Mr. Parker, are you ready, sir?
I am ready, Your Honor.
Okay.
Eagerly awaiting Mr. Silvaggio's return.
As far as the objections concerned, I'll suspend.
Continue on this. Mark, you can put that back up and just show me the warnings part. Okay, second line, tell me if I say this one correctly. Failure can result from surface damage, improper pressure or temperature, or use with improper chemicals. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Why is this warning included on the side of the Milwaukee MW500 ORP meter?
Well, as it sort of suggests, there are different things that it can affect the sensor, that electrode that we've been addressing. And surface damage, for instance, what does that mean? If somebody damages that platinum tip, bends it, or just coming out of that platinum tip, there's a little bit of glass, there's a little bubble that attaches into it, and just like a little dome, and the tip comes out like that, right? If somebody damages that glass, scratches it, or damages the tip of the probe, bends it, there will be an effect on the outcome of the readings.
It's improper pressure.
Pressure, okay. Is it an idea of pressure? You go down into the ocean, and
Well, this
you
is
go down.
hypothetical.
Yes, if you were, this is hypothetical. If you were to go down into the ocean, the pressure increases on every 7 feet, I think it is, right? They call it bar, B-A-R. And all kinds of different things have different pressure ratings on them. So this electrode that's with this unit has a certain bar of pressure that it can accept and a certain bar of pressure that it will not accept. And should it exceed any kind of excess pressure, it could affect the outcome of the meter. There are rubber seals. For instance, temperature.
Let's go to that. What's temperature?
So,
why is that on this box?
So high temperature, for instance, there is temperature ratings on the electrode. And for a reason, because all the components, the intricate components that are inside of this sensor are in totality making up a sensor that can take a reading at a given range of temperature. So we say, okay, I'm going to give you a hypothetical number, between 20 degrees Fahrenheit and 100 degrees Fahrenheit, this sensor will work, or it will not beyond those. If temperature comes into play, there are rubber seals inside there, they'll expand. That changes the outcome of the readings. The plastic that's made of, that blue outer seal that keeps the gel inside, that will contract or expand with heat, or lack of heat, cold. The gel that's inside can liquefy, which is really bad. It's not meant to be in liquid form. But if the temperature rises too high, it can become liquefied, and all that gel can just almost like leak out if the seal on the bottom expands too much.
And let me make sure on the temperature. So if it gets too hot in a place, in Las Vegas, we have some extreme high temperatures during the summer months. This last summer, not so bad, but we have some bad temperatures. Could the temperature on the outside temperature affect the ability of this meter to work?
The sensor and the meter, because the meter also has environmental temperature specifications in the instructions. So it generally says, okay, the environmental operating instructions are from this point to this point. And sometimes in some of the manuals, they're lumped together as an entire system, because the lowest one, meaning if the meter can only operate in an environment of 5 to 10, but the electrode can operate in an environment of, say, 6 to 20, we have to go with the lowest value. So, we would go with the meter specification on environmental temperature.
Opposite side of high heat, let's go to freezing temperatures. You talked about the gel. Can a freezing temperature have an effect on the meter?
It can, on the meter and the sensor, yes.
How would a low temperature below freezing affect the meter, the probe?
Okay. Well, there's glass inside of that sensor, and it's not the type of glass that you look through the window over here and see. It's a specially formulated glass with certain chemical components to it, certain sodium and hydrogen components. And that glass can break. Like, if you put anything that's glass in a very, 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 very cold environment, it can become potentially very brittle and break very quickly.
What does an ORP meter do? What does it do?
Okay. It does one thing and one thing only. It cannot determine if
What
water
does
is
it do?
alkaline.
What does it do?
It measures the aqueous-based solutions to determine if they either can have the potential to oxidize or reduce, meaning give off or accept an ion in the simplest forms.
Can an ORP meter tell you anything about the chemical composition of the solution?
No. It cannot determine the chemical composition. You need other instruments for that.
In this case, there's been some evidence regarding hydrazine. Can the ORP meter detect hydrazine?
Not at all.
Could it even detect oxygen?
It's not meant to detect oxygen, but it could in an indirect way.
Could it detect hydrogen?
Yes, activity.
The activity, but would it have a readout that says this is hydrogen?
No, absolutely not. It only reads out in millivolt, which is 1/1000th of 1 volt.
And that's an electrical charge, correct? Or part of it, 1/1000th of one charge.
Yes, it's current, it's a measurement of current. So 9 volts can be changed into current through different equations. But like a little battery has 9 volts. You measure it with the multimeter, it gives you a reading on it in voltage. Ours gives it in millivolts, 1/1000th of that.
Could the meter determine the consistency of what's in any water as far as the chemical composition?
Absolutely not.
So the water that you have in there, in your bottled water there from Capriati's, you put the probe in there, would it tell you about anything that's in there as far as the chemicals?
It cannot determine any kind of chemicals or minerals that are inside of it.
Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, you think it's time for a break? See some hands, yes. That's what I thought. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, remember this is important to remember. And, because it's easy to slip up on this admonishment. Remember, you're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this trial, or to read, watch, or listen to any report of or commentary on the trial by any person connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including without limitations, newspaper, television, radio, social media. Remember all the Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Tumblr, Snapchat prohibitions. And we talked about this from the very outset. Remember when I came down to meet you weeks ago, No Dr. Googles, no Professor Googles, right? You understand what I mean by that? And I told you that at the very outset when we started and I swore you in. Remember?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And last but not least, do not form or express any opinion on any subject connected with this trial until the cause is finally submitted to you. And they're in your hands. I would take 15.
Yes, Your Honor. All right, so report to the jury.
Jury is clear, please be seated, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to call you back across. Okay, anything we need to address outside the presence?
Your Honor, briefly, Mr. Rasmussen has said that there had been a 16-1 disclosure on this person named Brown, and I didn't remember that, so I had my office check. There has been no 16.1 disclosure in this case on this person. He did file a 16.1 disclosure in a different case called the Quante Henry case. But that's not this case. He filed the Quante Henry on 331 with 4-5, and that's where this Brown person that I hadn't heard came from. But since there hasn't been a 16.1 disclosure in this case, our position would be that the person cannot testify in this case.
Your Honor, we did, and I will bring that document, the 16.1, the amended 16.1, the witness list for this case, and I'll bring those to you, and I want to make sure the defendant gets them as well for this specific case. Remember that all the cases in this case were consolidated for discovery purposes. So we'll make sure that happens, and we'll get that for you. Thank you.
All right, so I'm asking for your Honor, show me the one that was filed in this case.
And Your Honor, to be clear, they did include her on the pretrial disclosures a week before.
No, I
trial.
understand the distinction between pretrial disclosures
Right.
and 16.1. I get that, so you don't have to explain that. Secondly, and we had a sidebar issue regarding prior lawsuits. What do I do with that? I mean, I took a look and this is straight out of Beatty versus Thomas, and it says, quote, "At one point during the 3-week trial over appellant's objection, the court admitted in the evidence testimony that happened at Metasonics that it had never been sued regarding the Doppler, period, close quote." The next lines, I mean, just the next 3 words, "This was error." What do I do with that?
I think you should instruct the jury to disregard that question and answer, Your Honor.
And what do I do with it? I just want everybody to know what do I do with that.
No objection, Your Honor, to that.
What else can we do?
I think the curative instruction should also include
Your
that
Honor,
the reason why.
We're gonna,
should the witness be in here for this discussion?
you know, we can have him step down on this. So we can, and Mr. Robbins, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins.
I mean, one of the, I don't mind telling you, is the first thing that comes to light on issues like this, I think about Gunderson. Right?
Right.
And it talks about this, it does. What do I do? We're at trial. I don't know, I'm not gonna do anything until recommendations are made. That's all I do, you know. And I'll let you all handle this. Secondly, did we get a chance to look at all the questions for the panel member? I just wanted to get it to you so you can think about it.
Yeah, we did, this one actually got covered, but I think Mr. Parker might cover it more than that.
Yeah, well, I know the hydrogen question's covered, so we can agree, we don't need to ask this one, right?
We agree.
I have not looked at them yet, Your Honor, I've been up there, so I
No,
apologize.
and I gave it to your co-counsel.
I'm not saying that you didn't, but we'll have a look at it.
But this is an easy one, now, you asked the hydrogen.
I agree with you, Your Honor, I was going to ask that question, so.
No, you've asked it.
No, just for a minute, I was going to ask it as part of my direct.
Yeah, no, but it was asked, and it was answered, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. So this one right here, I won't ask. Everything else you can look at and think about. And I'm gonna take a break.
All rise.
Enjoy your break.
I need to know, it's 2459, 2460, 2461. I need to know what those descriptions are so I can.
Court will sit in, back to work.
Making sure we have more.
Please be seated.
That is on the record. Are we ready to continue, counsel?
We are, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, we have one small item about one of the exhibit numbers. During direct examination, I put in a photo of the side of the Milwaukee meter box. The box itself is oriented evidence for that particular photograph was not. We are going to take that particular photo out of our one exhibit and rename it as Exhibit 7180, and we will provide a hard copy of that to Ms. Torrey in the morning. Assuming that it's admitted by everyone.
No objection.
No objection. Mr. Robbins?
No objection. 7180, you know?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor, that's all.
Mr. Parker, you ready, sir?
I am ready, Your Honor.
Okay.
Eagerly awaiting Mr. Silvaggio's return.
What's that, Your Honor?
I'll just have your water.
Yes, Your Honor.
All rise, please, Your Honor.
Please be seated. Put the witness back on the stand, Your Honor.
Yes, we can.
Can we stipulate the presence of jury?
Thank you, sir.
We agree.
We stipulate to the presence of the jury. We got all agree, right?
Be cautious as you sit, please.
Okay, sir, you may be seated. Mr. Parker, we ready to proceed with cross-examinations?
We are, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Silvaggio, I don't believe we've met.
No, sir, we have not.
All right. I've had the pleasure, Mr. Silvaggio, of reading your deposition. Do you recall being deposed in this matter January 26, 2023?
Sometime ago, yes, sir.
And when you were deposed, you were asked, of course, to swear that the testimony you would give would be truthful and honest, correct?
As best as I could remember, yes.
The best is what?
As best as I could, yes.
As best as you can remember, or as honest as you could be?
Both, actually.
Good, good. And you were sworn in before you sat down today, correct?
Yes,
Again, to tell the truth, correct?
yes, sir.
And that's what you've done thus far? Is that your position?
To the best of my recollection, yes, sir.
So perhaps I was confused, and I'm gonna give you an opportunity to clear some things up for me. Is there any reason that Milwaukee Instruments can't put the platinum probe in vinegar for 4 to 5 days before it ships the product? Sure, sure. Is there any reason that Milwaukee Instruments can't put the platinum probe in vinegar for 4 to 5 days before it ships the product?
Any reason for that? It's not a standard operating procedure in the industry first. The second, it would condition the probe for potentially for a negative ORP reading, and a lot of our customers don't use it for that.
So are you telling this jury now that if you were to condition the probe before you packaged it and sent it off in the box, that your users couldn't get a positive ORP reading?
That's not what I said.
I'm asking you, are you saying that?
No.
Could they get a negative ORP reading?
If they conditioned it,
If your company, if Hanna conditioned it before it put it in the box?
Objection. Objection. I don't believe that you asked about Hanna, you asked about Milwaukee.
No, I didn't think I named any company. And that's, we'll take a step back. Mr. Rasmussen is Hanna's attorney, correct?
yes.
And he was asking you multiple questions about Milwaukee, correct?
I answered many questions about Milwaukee, correct.
And you work for both Milwaukee and Hanna, correct?
I work for both companies, correct.
President of one and vice president of operations for the other, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you visited Romania over 100 times, correct?
That's correct.
And the product is made under the Hanna umbrella in Romania, correct?
That's correct.
So if Mr. Rasmussen was to get up in front of this jury and say, we're just a distributor, would it be fair to say that in fact, that Hanna umbrella makes it, sells it, distributes it, brings it from Romania and into the United States?
Well, for different reasons, like many, many corporations in America, such as Amazon, General Motors, etc., we have a structure, we have a corporate structure. It's for taxation, it's for the correct legal representations in each country, and there are many different corporations under our umbrella. We, in the United States, operate underneath the company called Hanna Instruments Incorporated.
Great. And is it fair to say that the same family owns all 121 of those Hanna entities?
The total structure, I don't know how the whole structure is in Europe and the rest of the world. But there is a family who owns the different entities. How it's overall structure, I don't know that.
All right. Mr. Silvaggio, let's take it slow, and then we're going to get back eventually to this question regarding
Sure.
how you ship that meter. Is it fair to say that there are roughly 121 entities under the Hanna umbrella?
I've never counted them, but if you have,
You don't dispute that, do you?
I'm sorry?
You don't dispute that, do you?
Well, I don't know the actual count, so I can't dispute it.
Is it fair to say that there is roughly 60 locations within 47 countries in this world?
How many?
60 locations in 47 countries. I think that's what your website
I'm not involved in the production of the website or the content material that goes on, sir.
You know there's 47 countries in which you operate, correct?
I know there's several different countries in which we operate. I don't know the exact number. They're constantly changing, that much I do know.
And all of them are owned by the same Nardo family, correct?
How it's overall structured, again, I don't know. I'm not privy to that information. It's not within my scope of work day to day. But somehow, some way, I don't know how the shares are divvied up or anything like that. But I would say that if there's a structure at the end of it, there's an ownership probably by them.
By that one family, correct?
I would say by that one family eventually, somehow.
And not only does Hanna share employees like yourself in Milwaukee, but isn't it true that the Hanna entities have the same controller, Mr. Dupree over here, seated at the end of the table? You recognize him, did you not?
Of course, yes. I recognize Mr. Dupree as a colleague. We've worked together for almost 30 years. I don't know his day-to-day exact details of what companies he covers. I know he's responsible for accountancy.
For the Hanna entities, correct?
I don't know if it's all the Hanna entities or if it's not. I do not know the answer to that.
Same CPA for all the Hanna entities, correct?
What do you mean CPA?
You know what a CPA is, correct?
A certified public accountant.
Right. Isn't there one CPA firm that handles all of the business transactions for all of the Hanna entities? From manufacturer to distributor to Romania to Rhode Island to North Carolina, correct?
Mr. Parker, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to it.
Now, let's see if we can take a step back. You told this jury that the box that the meter comes in is sent from Romania to the United States, correct?
It is shipped from Romania, a company in Romania, which one, I don't know. And it's shipped to the United States for the company that I work for, Hanna Instruments Incorporated.
Right. And then Milwaukee, the other company you work for, buys it from Hanna.
That's correct.
Good enough. So, let me go back to the question. Is there any reason that Milwaukee Instruments can't put the platinum probe in vinegar for 4 to 5 days before it ships the product?
It wouldn't make sense. It's not standard operating procedure. There are many customers who don't use it for that purpose. And if we shipped it out with vinegar in it, We're not licensed to ship with the FDA.
So that's-
For the customer to receive it
Mhm.
and do this on their own, it's quite easy.
And I think that's what you told this jury. You told this jury that vinegar is a food product, and we'd have an issue with the FDA or some other agency which would prevent you from doing it. You would require some kind of licensing. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge, if, even in the importation business, when you get into Boston, for instance, there's FDA regulations for customs clearing and for any products, like a cheese product. I don't know if any of you have traveled internationally. You come in and you have an orange in your pocket accidentally, for instance. A dog sniffs you out, and the next thing you know, you're in trouble because you're bringing in food and you don't have the right to bring that into this country. Well, on an aggregate basis, it's the same thing with customs and the FDA.
Your Honor, I'd like to show Mr. Silvaggio his deposition response to that. I believe, can we show it separately, Shane, on his monitor? Or if we show it on his monitor, it comes up on the full screen.
We could turn these screens off as an alternative.
I would like
Yeah,
him,
that's fine.
I'd like him to take a look before I ask the court to publish his deposition for purposes of impeachment, Your Honor.
The problem is the audio is coming out of the screen.
Uh-huh. Can you show him simply the deposition without the audio?
Sure.
Thank you. Just a transcript.
Do we have a page line reference?
I sure do. Page 180, line 8. Through page 180, line 24.
It should come up on your screen to your left, sir.
After you've had a chance to look through those lines, let me just lift your head up and we can get started again, Mr. Silvaggio. Finished? Are you finished to line 24?
Not quite.
Line 8 to line 24.
It's scrolling.
Is it? Can you?
It's done.
It's
Is
done.
it done? Okay, good.
Yes.
All right. Is it fair to say, Mr. Silvaggio, when you were deposed under oath and asked that very same question, the reasons that you gave to the jury a few moments ago, the FDA, the licensing, you never mentioned those things, did you?
Well, in that statement, I said upon, I think that if you back up a little bit, it said upon further investigation. And further investigation has determined that we don't have the ability to do such a thing. And
Your Honor, I have to
it's a
publish
food
this.
product.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to-
Let's go ahead and publish it.
Your Honor, I have to publish this deposition. Could you play his response, please, Shane?
You want the entire page line or just a response?
Page 180, line 8 through line 24. So that the jury has an understanding of what Mr. Silvaggio said under oath.
You're gonna proceed with the deposition.
And we're gonna play it, but truth, here, and this makes it easier. 180. Yep. Sure. Let's go ahead and play, let's play it, as opposed to me asking you, as I've already asked you a question, Mr.
Is there any reason that Milwaukee Instruments can't put the platinum probe in vinegar for 4 to 5 days before it ships the product?
Is there a reason? We don't know what the applications are. It doesn't smell pleasant, and it would be an extra step of labor that an extra step of labor that we'd have to consider. But there's not necessary, it's not standard in the industry.
But in theory, Milwaukee Instruments or even dosing pump could pre-oxidize the platinum probes themselves instead of relying on the customer to do it, right?
In theory.
Thank you, Shane. Now, that was your testimony under oath, January 26, 2023, correct?
Yes.
All right. Did you mention the FDA?
I said, in theory.
I'm sorry, sir. Did you mention the FDA?
Oh, no, sir.
All right. Did you mention any additional licensing you would need?
No, I didn't.
All right. And you understood the oath you took then as well as today, correct?
Absolutely, sir.
All right.
But in theory is what I answered, sir. And it turns out that we couldn't or can't.
Well, and we don't know if you could or you couldn't, because when you answered that question, you didn't mention the FDA and you didn't mention licensing, did you?
Further investigation proved differently.
So you're saying after the fact, after being sued, after knowing you're coming to court, and months after this deposition, then you did an investigation to determine if you could oxidize that probe. Is that what you're telling this jury?
No.
Objection argumentative.
Is that what you're telling this jury, sir?
No, sir.
Well, you just said further investigation. Now, either you did the investigation before the deposition and lied about it,
No.
or you did the investigation after the deposition. So which is it?
Sir, in theory is what I tried to respond to, and when you learn about something, it comes into play, and we learned about it, that you cannot put it into a transportation because it is food, upon informing myself to a greater extent.
Sir, let me just have you answer the question that's right in front of you. Did you do this investigation before or after the deposition?
I'm not sure exactly, but it brought a question to my mind about it. And upon researching it, it must have been after then, that we discovered that it's not a possibility without problems.
So let's make sure the jury understands this, Mr. Silvaggio. After being sued, after having your deposition taken, after years of litigation, you finally decided to do an investigation on whether or not you could pre-oxidize that probe. Is that what you're telling this jury?
No, I decided to understand, is it possible to oxidize the probe overseas and import it in such a way? And the answer became no.
You did this investigation, or whatever you want to call it, after your deposition, correct?
Well, I came to learn of it after.
That's right. Before then, you didn't look into it, did you?
There was no need to.
Now, let's talk about no need. I appreciate that response. We know now, and you know now because of your involvement in this litigation, that we, in this case alone, we have 9 plaintiffs.
Oh, you can choose this, sorry.
No worries. 9 plaintiffs, 2 of which lost their sister, Ms. Ryerson, Kathleen Ryerson, and then 6 others who suffered acute liver failure. You're aware of that, correct?
I've become aware of that, correct. It's horrible.
All right. And you've also become aware of the fact that there were customers of Milwaukee that sent emails and chats indicating that they were having difficulty getting consistent readings from your meter, correct?
None of them were from real water. We have increased from all over the place, from many different states, from many different application pools. It could be something to do in school, it could be something to do with whatever application that these customers are using them for. But real water never contacted us and said they had a problem, to my knowledge, especially on the check.
All right, we'll get there. But let's just answer the question I asked, Mr. Silvaggio. You were aware that Milwaukee received communications from customers indicating that they were getting inconsistent readings from the Milwaukee MW500 orb meter, correct?
I was aware of customers, like any other customer on any other instrument, that they have questions. And when they have questions, they send in an inquiry, and we do our best to answer them.
You were informed during your deposition,
I'm sorry?
you were informed during your deposition, January 26, 2023, Mr. Kemp, seated right here,
Yes,
my
sir.
left, put in front of you, I believe, 12 different occasions where customers were concerned with inconsistent instructions on how to oxidize the probe, correct?
They were customers who had questions, just like any one of our other meters. They come through the chat line, we do our best to answer them and rectify the situation. So we sold 11,500 units in this duration, and I think 0.001 feedback.
All right. So, Mr. Silvaggio, let me ask that from this point forward, you try to relegate your answer to my question, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Trying to.
and perhaps I'll do a better job of narrowing the question so that I get a focused response, okay?
I'm trying to.
All right,
Yes, sir.
thank you. But the answer to my question, I believe, is you're aware of customers having problems with inconsistent readings from the ORP meter, correct?
Those exact terms, I don't remember, Mr. Parker.
No worries.
We have many inquiries coming across from many different products.
All right. Now, it's my understanding that your company, well, let's see, let's pick which company I'm talking about that you belong to. The Milwaukee company
Yes, sir.
sold somewhere between 16 and 18,000 orb meters per year. That's what I think Jason Brown testified to. Does that sound right to you?
If he said that, I don't know where he got the data from. It doesn't ring a bell to me. I don't know what he said and why he said it.
And I believe you told this jury a little while ago that you had 0.001% feedback on this particular meter. Is that correct? Is that the
Can
number?
you say that again?
0.001 feedback on the ORP meter?
Out of about 11,500,
Yes, sir.
I had about 0.001 if I did the math correctly. I'm not perfect.
Yes, sir. Now, let me see if we can put this into context. You also told this jury that you don't recall any refunds on that order meter, correct?
Well, I don't recall giving any refunds on an ORP meter. Some people might ask because maybe their product got damaged or they have a question on it, and after we answer the question, we usually get them to decide differently. So there's a lot of different inquiries that come in about different meters. So to the best of my knowledge, sir, there could be someone who requested it, I don't know, and they processed it without me knowing.
Yes, sir. So if there were in fact defective probes that were returned by the customer to Milwaukee,
Mhm.
and Milwaukee had to ship them a new meter or probe, would you consider that a refund?
No, sir, that's a warranty repair. Each meter has a warranty on it, has a 2-year warranty on the meter, and a 6-month warranty on the probe. If a customer can produce, we always ask for the customer to produce the receipt. If they can produce the receipt and it's within those time frame, we honor the warranty. In fact, sometimes if it's very close for customer service purposes, we also honor it. And even sometimes when it might be a little bit even beyond the normal, but the customer's really upset or might be questioning the warranty period, for customer service wise, we stand behind our product. We might even give them a new meter or a new sensor.
All right, so instead of giving them money, you give them another meter or probe.
That's correct, sir.
So you may not call it a refund, you call it a replacement.
Yeah, a warranty replacement.
Good enough. Now let's say, but I'm trying to reconcile this, I've been trying to figure this out since, while you were being questioned on direct by Mr. Rasmussen. What percentage of your probes, let's say you're selling 10,000 probes, just to make the number easy, okay? What percentage of those probes would have to be defective for you to investigate whether or not the probe is adequate, whether or not the warnings are adequate, whether or not the instructions are adequate? How many, what percentage? 1%, 0.05%? What percentage of those would have to come to your attention as being defective before you would do some kind of testing or investigation on that meter?
Are you speaking of the meter, the
Yes.
sensor, the
Just the meter itself.
the manual?
The meter itself.
I think a fair number could be somewhere in the, usually you have targets in the industry of about 3 to 3.5%.
Okay. So 10% would be way out of whack. If 10% of your probes were defective, that would be way out of whack.
Objection, Your Honor, it's not the same question. The first one is about the meter, the second one is about the probe. Those are two different questions.
I don't mind changing that one, Your Honor.
Okay.
No problem. If 10% of your meter was considered defective, would that be way out of the industry standard?
If 10% of the meters were considered or proven to be defective, of course, it's a little bit,
Well, it's more than 3 times what you said, right? You said 2 to 3%, correct?
Yes, if the number is correct. If the
Right.
number of 10% is correct, which it may not be, then we would consider that.
And the same would be true for the probe. If there was 10% of all the probes, that's 1,000 out of 10,000 were found to be defective, would that be a reason to investigate or test the probe to see what's going on?
If the number were correct, that would be a reasonable thing to do, yes.
All right, Shane, can you play the testimony, the trial testimony of Mr. Jason Brown, please? And this is from the depot designation, Your Honor. And the reason I'm saying that, the depot is actually cleaner than the court testimony because of how it's being seen.
Just make an objection that this is outside.
So there were cases.
There's nothing about Jason Brown that I ever asked a question on.
He asked about issues dealing with Jason Brown.
Oh, actually, the direct was fairly comprehensive.
On top of that, Judge, he's the managing agent. We can play his deposition anytime,
For any
or
purpose,
want
I
for
understand.
any.
Let's listen to Jason Brown. Thank you, Your Honor.
So there were cases where Milwaukee determined that a probe was defective, right?
Yes.
Okay. And how often did that happen?
Not very often.
Okay, can you quantify that a little better for me?
Not really. I mean,
1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000, what?
I'd say maybe 10 out of 100.
So 10 out of 100, you have.
And when I say that, I don't mean it's bad in a week. I'd say within the warranty period, 6 months.
Okay, so 10% of the probes don't operate the way they're intended to, and you replace them. Is that correct?
It is.
Now, that's Jason Brown. The number one person in charge, other than yourself, at Milwaukee, correct?
Just out of hospital, yes.
Okay, so you're saying when you get out of the hospital, you don't tell the truth? Is that what you're telling me?
That's not what I said.
Okay. So he was sworn just like you were sworn to tell the truth when you took your deposition, correct? When you gave
Of
your
course
deposition.
it was, yes.
All right. Now, and he said 10% of your probes are defective. That's what he just testified to. You heard it, correct?
I heard him,
Based
yes.
upon what you just told the jury, that's more than three times what would be acceptable in the industry based upon your testimony, correct?
If it's accurate, it is 3 times.
And did you do any testing of that probe after receiving all of the client or customer inquiries, using your words,
Did I do any testing
of the probe?
of the probe?
Yes.
I've done testing on probes before, yes, sir.
Okay, let's make sure we're clear. Did you do any testing on the MW500 probe?
Yes, I have done testing on an MW500 probe.
Okay, hold that point right there. Have you done an investigation prior to your deposition of the meter?
An investigation of the meter. What do you mean? I'm not clear.
To see if there's any problems with inconsistent readings or negative ORP readings?
Okay, I understand the question. When I'm in North Carolina, at times, there are sometimes, we have something called returns, warranty returns. Some people insist to send that they want to send their product back just to be checked. So we might accept it back on what we call an RMA, return. We'll bring it in. We put the meter with the electrode, and we have some solutions that we can put it in to see if the meter and the electrode are working together. So that would be, yes, sir. On occasion, I've had to do that.
Okay, make sure I understand. Is that considered a test or an investigation you just described to the jury?
Well, it's both.
All right. Let's see. You're not a chemist, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. You're not a mechanical engineer.
No, sir.
You didn't design this meter, correct?
No, sir.
Did you have anyone from the R&D department of one of those 120-odd entities or someone in Romania actually do an investigation on the meter?
There was no need to.
That's a no?
That's a no, sir.
All right. Did you have them test the probe after receiving any of the inquiries from the customers regarding inconsistent readings?
I don't know if the readings were inconsistent, but I did not have anybody test it because it was not necessary to have them tested.
Okay,
Had
so
it been, I
I'm
could
sorry,
have
I
had the
didn't
opportunity.
Right. I'm sorry. So, what we do know at this point is the only investigation that has been done related to this meter after all of these years and all of those customer inquiries was one that you did after your deposition was taken related to shipping the product pre-oxidized, correct? Is that correct?
Can you restate that question, sir?
Sure. The only investigation, one that actually involves someone either testing the probe or determining if there were inconsistent readings because of a problem with the probe, or testing the meter to determine if there were problems with the meter resulting in inconsistent readings. None of that was done because you said it was not necessary, correct?
That's not correct. No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Tell me what was done there.
As I stated earlier, if I had purchased a meter and I was working with it, I'm just pretending to be a customer, and this is prior to deposition, there happened to be a question on that meter, and I, the customer, want to return it to say, hey, can you check this thing? Please, at the factory to make sure it's working. Well, we have a couple of ways of doing that. We have something called a simulator, and you can connect it to a meter, and you turn the simulator on, and it simulates the same thing as the electrode would when you put it into a situation such as a liquid water. And you can dial in -1000, you can dial in -500, and the meter goes to -1,000 or -500, or to 0 millivolt, or to 500 millivolt, or to 600 millivolt. Then you can remove that simulator, it's just a little box and a little meter, and you can connect the electrode to it post after that. So you know the meter's doing what it's supposed to do, so you've checked it for the customer. And then we have the electrode, you can connect it through the BNC connector that we spoke about earlier. And you can dip that into a solution that has a value. And if it comes up with the correct value, we know that at that value, at that point, it's working, and we check it at a different value. We know at that value, at that point, it's working. And then we make a report, or call the customer and say that we're returning the product because it happens to be working. Now, if it isn't working, you do what any ethical company would do if it's within the warranty period and it's having an issue with the sensor, then you replace the sensor because that's what you paid for as a consumer. It's what I paid for as a consumer. My car broke down, I brought it to the warranty, and they said, sorry, it was on the lot for a year, and you have a 3-year warranty. 1 year of it expired, wouldn't you be a little upset? I would. So we will take a look at the meter's warranty timeframe, ensure that it's in there. Look at the probe, make sure it's in warranty period. And sometimes when it's not, we'd even, for customer service purposes, either replace the electrode or replace the meter.
Okay, so I appreciate that, Mr. Silvaggio, but you and I both know that this case is about, in terms of your meter, oxidizing the probe, correct?
Do I know that?
Yeah, do you know that? I'm asking.
I think you're telling me.
Well, let me ask, do you know that that's an issue in this case?
It would be an issue for any meter if you don't oxidize, the P probe for a particular purpose. It could be an issue, yes.
All right. And just so I have an understanding of your familiarity with the ORP meter, have you ever used an ORP meter?
I have.
Okay. And how have you used it?
How do I use it?
How have you used it in the past?
Well, I don't know if my girlfriend has a pool.
Okay.
And we just put it in about 1.5 years ago. We dig the hole ourselves and did all the work ourselves to save money. We're not wealthy people. And at the end, we filled it all with water. And you have to have about 3 things in a pool to make the pool water correct. And one is chlorine, one you have to measure pH, and ORP. If all those things are in the right balance, then the germs that are in the pool, they'll get killed, they'll die, because the chlorine is working correctly.
When was this pool built?
We started, it took us about 1.5 years. We started around 2021, digging the hole. I mean, we went down like 8 feet.
When did you finish it?
We finished it just at the beginning, this year, last year, somewhere in the middle of last year, I think it was.
All right. You know, I'd like to show Mr. Silvaggio his deposition on this point. Let's just show it to Mr. Silvaggio. Shane, go to page 40, lines 3 through 7, please. And you know something, Shane? That's okay. He has a deposition transcript in front of him. I just recall we published it. You go to page 40.
The answer?
Yes, then when you, after you've read it, just lift your head up and tell me that you're done.
Which line?
Lines 3 through 7.
Line 3, both negative and
No,
positive.
listen, just read to yourself.
Okay.
Line 3 to line 7. And tell me, lift your head up when you're done. Done?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall that question, the question I just asked you a second ago, being asked of you during your deposition? Have you ever used an MRP or ORP meter? Remember that question being asked of you during your deposition?
Sir, I'm on page 49.
40, 40.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. Perhaps I didn't say that clearly. 40. You recall not me, but that question being asked of you during your deposition.
I do recall.
You know, and I'd like to play that clip, Mr. Silvaggio, so the court, so the jury can be aware of the question and the answer.
You'd like to start at 3924?
Yes, that'll be perfect.
It will be permitted.
Thank you.
Court's indulgence, the TV is a little slow.
There it is. It's coming.
Have you personally ever used an ORP meter to take a measurement?
For any application,
Any
used an
application?
ORP. I have not used an ORP meter for a specific reason, for a specific application, for anyone in specific. I have had an ORP meter in my hand, and I have seen a reading.
I think it ends with on an ORP meter. That's what he's about. All right, see, when your deposition was taken, this very question was asked, you didn't point out this use of it in the pool, did you?
No, because it was my girlfriend's pool. It's not a company, it's not going into a business application. It's not going in for a customer, trying to show or demonstrate it. It was for a pool, and it might have even been this summer, actually, that I used it.
So you said maybe this summer now, a little while ago you told this jury before that deposition clip played, it was last year. Now you're saying it could have been this summer?
Time passes very rapidly, and sometimes,
I'm
you
listening.
know, as you get older, you know, and nothing locks in quite perfectly. So I'm not lying, I'm not trying to lie. I'm just giving an example of a story that happened. Now, did I remember it exactly this summer? But I remember, I even have pictures somewhere, you know, of her sending me the pool pictures turning green because she was trying to do something that she shouldn't have and correcting it, so.
Yes, sir. So your position now is, we're all getting older. You've confused last summer with this year. You confused not ever using an ORP meter with using an ORP meter. That's what you're telling the jury.
What I'm saying is sometimes you don't remember perfectly a date. That's all.
Now, Mr. Kemp had the pleasure of taking your deposition and going through with you several customer concerns or inquiries regarding the ORP meter. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And during that time, I think he quantified at the end somewhere around 9 actual communications between Milwaukee and its customers. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
All right.
So.
So, okay. Of those 12, 8 said 4 to 5 days to oxidize, 3 said 3 to 4 days. One was a tip card that said 48 hours. And then another said just acidic water. Do you recall all those different recommendations by Milwaukee on how you should oxidize the probe?
I don't recall each and every one, sir, but I remember Mr. Kemp was speaking of them. Yes, I do.
Okay. And is it fair to say, Mr. Silvaggio, that Milwaukee, neither Milwaukee or any Hanna entity, Hanna SL, Hanna Romania, Hanna International, Hanna Instruments, USA, I could care less what you want to call it, but none of the Hanna entities ever did a test that you're aware of to determine if there was one recommendation that could be provided for oxidizing the probe. Just one, as opposed to several.
There was no need to.
Sir, let me, again, I asked, were there any tests? I didn't ask if there was a need at this point. Remember, I'm trying to ask very focused questions. I would ask if you would honor me with yes or no if you can. Were there any tests to determine what was the proper oxidation method? Be it acidic water, vinegar, 1 day, 2 days, 48 hours, 5 minutes. Any test to determine it?
I don't recall any test for that purpose exactly. No.
That's right. And that would be from the entire time this orb meter has been on the market until now. Correct?
I can't remember that far back because honestly it's been on the market almost 25 years. Maybe more. So to ask me such a broad base.
Well, let's just narrow it to how long you've been with these companies. You've been with these companies since 1998, correct?
No, sir. I've been with Hanna Instruments since 1992, and I was made president of the company of Milwaukee in 1998.
That's right.
Yes.
And since you've been there, not a single test has been performed to determine what is the appropriate oxidizing period for this probe, correct?
None that I'm aware of.
That's right. Even today, even after we've had a death involved in this case, 6 accounts of acute liver failure resulting in each one of them going to the hospital, a kid near, an inch from having a liver transplant, you've still not tested to figure out what's the appropriate method of oxidizing that probe, correct?
Before he answers, can we just, can we approach?
Yeah. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you so much. Mr. Silvaggio, when we left off, I was asking you about testing. Understood?
Yes.
You went right back to it. I want to know whether or not you, Hanna, not something involved in this litigation, something that may have been done by some expert involved in this litigation by any of the parties here, did you, Hanna, authorize a test to be performed on the appropriate parameters for oxidizing the probe?
Sir, it's not my role at Hanna, so no, I wouldn't institute anything like that.
You're not aware of Hanna doing it to this date, correct?
Correct.
And so as a result, be it 48 hours, acidic water, 3 to 4 days, 4 to 5 days, 6 to 7 days, your oxidizing kit, no test has been done by Hanna to determine what is the appropriate way to oxidize that probe, correct?
I would not know, it's not within my role, sir.
And yet you're the president of Milwaukee, correct?
Yes, sir,
Good.
but you asked me about Hanna.
That's fine. Milwaukee sold it to Real Water, correct?
Milwaukee sold meters to Real Water.
During your deposition, I wonder if you recall this, you were asked about these different ways of oxidizing the probe. Ones we just went over. Remember that?
I don't remember all of it, but...
Generally.
Yeah, in general.
And you remember during those questions, you indicated that perhaps there was a mistake with the tip card, or perhaps there was a mistake with the instruction manual, that they didn't have all the same recommendations for oxidizing the probe. Do you remember that?
I'm not sure how I phrased it, but if, I could have said that there was a difference in some of the answers, but I'm not sure the exact phraseology that I used.
Okay. Do you remember, you looked at, just a few, maybe an hour ago, the tip card with Mr. Rasmussen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what's your recollection of what the instruction was for oxidizing the probe based upon the tip card?
Minimum, I think it said a minimum 48 hours and a 2.5 vinegar.
All right. Now, did it say vinegar or acidic water?
It did not say acidic water, no, sir.
Do you recall prior to the MA9025 oxidizing kit coming out, that acidic water was a recommendation from Hanna?
No, sir, it was not the recommendation from Hanna.
What was it? What was the recommendation before the kit came out?
Before the kit came out,
Yes, sir.
which is the oxidizing reduction potential kit,
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure what the recommendation was. There was a new application to come about in the industry for ORP, and it's called Kangen water. And new applications pop up all the time. Sometimes the industries don't catch up with them prior to these applications coming about. So they start using a meter to check it. And then they form these little blogs and these little groups, and information starts transferring back and forth amongst them. And in that information was this talk about this acidic water for 2.5. And that's where that information came. We never recommended that to anyone to do.
Okay. So is it your understanding that Milwaukee never recommended distilled vinegar for a minimum of 3 to 4 days? Are you aware of that?
Well, vinegar, yes, sir. We're at 2.5 acidic, not distilled, acidic vinegar. Distilled is like having distilled water. You take this water, you boil it, and you get all the total dissolved solids out of it, all the minerals and everything else like that. That's not what we recommended. We recommended in 2.5 acidic vinegar. It's a little bit different than acidic water.
Okay. Do you recall saying that recommendations given by Mr. Jason Brown, that varied, different recommendations on oxidizing the probe, that they were just typos? He just made typos when he made those recommendations?
I said it could have been a typo. I don't know what Jason typed in each and every one of them, sir.
Well, take a look at your deposition, page 94.
Yeah.
Line 19 through 6.
Line 19?
94, line 19 through page 95, line 6.
Starting at what point, sir, on page 94?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Page 94, line 19.
Line 19.
Yes, sir.
You read it out loud or just read it again?
Just read it yourself. See that?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that during your deposition, you called Mr. Jason Brown recommendation to a client or a customer to store it in white distilled vinegar for a minimum of 3 to 4 days? Just a typo, probably just a typo. Is that what you said?
Well, it had been in comparison to Mr. Kemp's other documents that he provided at the same time. And
Sir, let me just have you answer the question. Is that what you said on line 6?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
All right, good enough. Now, a couple of pages further into the deposition, page 100.
Yes, sir.
And in this deposition, in this part of the deposition, there is a recommendation to pre-oxidize for 48 hours. Do you see that? Page 100, lines 3 through 7.
Yes, sir.
So we've gone from 3 to 4 days to 48 hours. And how did you describe Mr. Jason Brown's recommendation that way?
Relative to overall conversation with Mr. Kemp, I said it's probably a typo, sorry.
All right. So now we got Jason Brown recommendation being considered a typo by you when he gave one recommendation. He changes his recommendation. You said that recommendation is also a typo, correct?
I said probably. I don't know for sure why he was recommending different timeframes.
Okay.
And for the Kenja water, not real water. He didn't change his information that he sent to real water. These are different customers in different locations in different states. So customer number 1 and customer number 2, both of them are not real water. They're in 2 different locations, 2 different states. And I don't know why he said 3 days to one and 4 days to the other, but on our tip card, which is in every box and every meter, which is sent out to every customer, they're real water, about 120 of these from us. It has that insert, it has that card. It says minimum 48 hours.
These recommendations are for canyon water or alkaline water like real water, correct?
I'm sorry?
These recommendations apply to canyon water as well as any alkaline water like real water, correct?
Well, Kangen water and real water don't have the same processes. Kangen water people do not add back chemicals. They don't take out the minerals through our RO filtration system as real water did. And they don't have titanium type tubes from Russia that they're using to try to make this water negative with some kind of battery charge on them that looks like it's from a jumper cable of a car. They don't have any of that.
So let me address that first, which is the next question, and then we'll get back to the question I asked.
Yes, sir.
Be it alkaline water, canyon water, beer, soda, wine, your ORP meter is supposed to determine what? ORP measurement, correct?
The ability of it, you asked me a question,
Yeah.
sir, I will answer.
Go ahead.
The ORP meter is supposed to determine the ability of an aqueous-based solution to either oxidize or reduce. That means either to accept or to give off an ion. That's all it determines,
Regardless of the solution, correct?
regardless of if it's wine or it's orange juice or milk.
All right, thank you. So when you try to differentiate between alkaline water and canyon water, that's a distinction without difference, correct? In terms of the ORP meter. You're just measuring oxidation reduction potential, correct? That's it.
Alkaline water is generally referred to as Kangen water, but they have different processes.
I'm not asking you about the processes. I'm asking you about the applicability of the use of your ORP meter in any liquid solution.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And in fact, be it canyon water or alkaline water, it should be able to work and provide a consistent measurement either way, correct?
Yes, yes.
So when you told the jury about all of these different processes, at the end of the day, if it's a liquid, the ORP meter should provide a consistent reading regardless of the solution, correct?
It will provide.
Right. You know something, let's take a look at your deposition, page 97, line 22, through page 98, line 6. And again, just look your head up when you're done reading. okay?
Start with line, sir.
Sure. Lines 97,
Page 97.
page
Page
97, page 97, line 22 through page 98, line 6.
Through which line?
Line 6.
Okay.
And you see that question was asked of you during your deposition on January 26, 2023, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me have you play that, please.
The meter's been used
Start at
my
line
people to
Perfect. That's perfect. Go ahead.
test Kenjin water. We don't exactly market this to anyone in specific. If people choose to use it for this, if they need to get a reading, either positive or negative, the meter should work positive or negative.
For Kangen or alkaline water, correct?
It should be able to work for any type of aqueous solution that has ORP type of parameter that could be measured.
Thank you. Now, during your deposition, you didn't talk about any processes, did you? When that question was presented to you.
I didn't know, sir.
All right. Now, when it comes to these recommendations, the various recommendations given by Mr. Brown, I believe your testimony today is you don't know what's correct or incorrect in terms of those recommendations. Is that a fair statement? You don't know if 48 hours is correct. You don't know if 2 days is correct, 3 days, acidic water, vinegar. You don't know what's correct in terms of how to oxidize that probe, do you?
We've had 48 hours as a minimum recommendation. Things greater than that actually wouldn't hurt the probe.
That's not the question I asked. And I want you to, this is a very important question. And this jury, I believe, wants to know the answer. You don't know what's correct or incorrect in terms of how to oxidize that probe, do you?
Well, if I know it's correct or incorrect on how to oxidize.
That's right. You don't know if it's 48 hours, 5 minutes, 2 days, 5 days, 3 days. You don't know what's the correct way of oxidizing that probe, do you? And how long it takes.
Well, we generally recommend 48 hours.
I didn't ask you that. Do you know, sitting here right now, today, September 26th, how to properly oxidize that probe and how much time you need?
I would soak it for 48 hours minimum.
Is that, you didn't answer the question. That's what you would do. Does Hanna know how to oxidize that probe today, right now? Or,
I don't know if Hanna knows.
all right. Hanna marketed, manufactured, sold that product. And sitting here today, the person they put on this stand does not know how to oxidize that probe. Is that correct?
I'm not involved in that.
Is that correct?
For Milwaukee, we generally recommend 48 hours, but for Hanna, that I don't know because I'm not involved in that.
Milwaukee doesn't know, does it?
From what I understand, Mr. Brian Moore is the one who wrote the
Mr. Brian Moore, rest in peace, is not here. You're here. You're the president of Milwaukee. Do you know how to oxidize that probe today? Can you tell this jury how much time it needs?
I would put it for minimum 48 hours in a 2.5 white vinegar.
Isn't it fair to say you don't know what the answer is? You just give them a
I'm not sure that's
recommendation.
fair to say, no.
All right, well, let's see what's fair to say on January 26, 2023. Take a look at your deposition, please. Page 100. Line 22 through page 101, line 2.
Okay.
You recall that question being asked of you during your deposition?
Well, I'm reading it here, yes, sir.
Okay. Let's have this played, so the jury can hear what he said on that day under oath.
Okay, so that's the correct recommendation, 4 to 5 days minimum, correct?
I'm not saying it's the correct or incorrect. We haven't done any testing either way. It's the most consistent.
Thank you. And so on that day, under oath, you said you don't know if it's correct, you don't know if it's incorrect, you haven't done any testing. And all you could say was, it seems to be the most consistent, right?
At Hanna, we hadn't done any, we hadn't, at Hanna. This
And you-
question pertaining to Hanna, I did not know if they did any testing. But it certainly was the most consistent, yes.
But you're
Because
selling-
we consistently explained to them that 2.5 acidic vinegar for minimum 48 hours was in every box, and it was very, very consistent in the explanation of it. So that's being consistent. On the Hanna side, I don't know if they did any testing.
Sir, you've already told this jury under direct examination that Milwaukee has 4 employees, I believe,
That's correct, sir.
a very small warehouse, no testing center, correct?
I wouldn't say no testing center.
Did it have an R&D department,
No,
research
sir.
and development
No, sir.
department? All right. All of that is in Romania, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And this product came from Hanna to Milwaukee, of which you're an employee or president or vice president of 2 of those companies, correct?
Of operations facilities at Hanna,
Okay. The vice president, correct?
of facilities.
Vice
operation.
president of facilities
Yes, sir.
and the president of Milwaukee.
Yes, sir.
And to your knowledge, you don't know what's correct or incorrect on how to oxidize that probe because no testing to your knowledge has been done, correct?
No testing was done, to my knowledge, by Hanna. That's correct.
And none's been done by Milwaukee to your knowledge.
To my understanding, Mr. Moore did some testing.
So, let's say Mr. Moore did some testing. Let's just say he did. On January 26, 2023, you didn't mention that testing, did you?
No, sir, you're correct.
That's
You're correct.
And you know, after 2018, you were still getting customer calls about the inconsistent readings on your probe, correct?
After 2018,
Yes, Mr. Moore died in 2018, correct?
yes,
And you were still getting communications from customers saying, this meter has been giving me inconsistent readings, correct?
I don't know if that terminology was exactly used, but we had customers that call in for many of our products. They call in on it, like, what I mean by call in, on the chat line, for instance, mostly. And they'll express an inquiry about the meter or any of our meters. So, and we try our best to answer them. It's natural.
So, we got questions before Mr. Moore's passing, we got questions after Moore's passing. To your knowledge, no testing ever done by Hanna. You believe Mr. Moore may have done a test, but whatever test that he didn't result in eliminating customer issues with receiving inconsistent readings, correct?
I don't know if the readings were inconsistent, Mr. Parker, but we have regular inquiries, like we have on all our meters.
Okay, so they're all a problem.
That's not what I said.
Okay, that's fine. That's what it sounded like you said. In terms of the owner's manual, you call it an owner's manual or instruction manual? Which one do you call it?
Oh, yeah. I think oftentimes people use those interchangeably.
Is it fair to say to this jury that there's not a single instruction on how to oxidize that probe in the owner's manual or instruction manual?
Which are you speaking of?
I'm speaking of the MW500 meter. The box is a manual that Mr. Kemp has been walking around with.
Okay,
Yes, the trial started, he keeps it in his wallet, he's so tied to it.
Okay.
You've seen this thing.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, it's long, it takes a long time to
Yes,
read it. It's heavy. You would agree with me, there's not a single instruction here on how to oxidize that probe in this document, correct?
In that particular manual, no, there is not.
All right. So that leaves you with a 48-hour recommendation that's not been tested, to your knowledge, by Hanna, who manufactures, distributes, sells this product to Milwaukee, who eventually sells it to customers like Bill Warren, correct?
I didn't follow the question. I'm so sorry.
No, that's probably my fault. I apologize. Let's break it down a little bit. That manual, instruction manual, or owner's manual,
Yes.
has no information telling a purchaser how to oxidize that probe, correct?
That's correct, sir.
All right. And we know, given your testimony, Hanna's never done any tests to determine the appropriate way to oxidize that probe, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So then that leaves us with Mr. Moore, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, is Mr. Moore a mechanical engineer?
I don't know his exact background and training.
All right.
I really don't.
All right. And to your knowledge, did Mr. Moore write the instruction manual?
No, to my knowledge, no. It was written in Romania.
That's right. Now, it's my understanding that Mr. Moore had something to do with the tip card that you also approved, correct?
Yes, yes.
And that one says 48 hours, correct?
Yes, sir.
Good enough. Not 4 or 5 days, 2 or 3 days, acidic water, doesn't say any of those things.
No, sir.
Got it. Now, do you recall being asked to produce all documents related to a February 22, 2019 exchange between Mr. Bush and Mr. Brown?
Objection beyond the scope there, Your Honor.
No, this goes to customer complaints and customer concerns. Overruled. All right. Did you review any of those?
Could you go back?
Sure. Did you review, let me just ask it this way.
Yeah.
Did you review all of the customer complaints or communications between Real Water and Milwaukee?
No, sir.
All right. That makes it even easier for you, Mr. Robbins. Did Mr. Jason Brown ever ask you to produce all of the communications, be it electronic or paper form?
During the initial days of the notification of lawsuit, we were asked to produce some documentation.
Mister, let me stop you for a second. That's a yes or no question. Did he ask you to produce it, yes or no?
Did Jason ask me?
Did Jason Brown ask you to produce all electronic and or paper copies of all communications?
I think who asked me was the attorneys, if I remember correctly. It was,
I don't want to know what the attorneys spoke to you about.
oh,
I'm simply asking, did Jason Brown ask you? That's a yes or no question.
I don't recall. Sorry.
All right.
Sorry.
What is the use life of the meter?
Well, the meter has a 2-year warranty, so
What is the use life of the probe?
the probe has a 6-month warranty.
So when you heard Mr. Brown testify that 10% of these probes were being determined to be defective within the useful life, within 6 months, what is your take on it?
Objection, this states Mr. Brown's testimony.
We had that testimony, Mr. Parker.
Yes, we sure do. I'd love to play it again, Your Honor. Could I play, Shane, can you please put on Mr. Jason Brown's testimony? It's page 9913 through page 91, line 13, with the most important sentence being on the first page of the next, first line.
So can we hold up for a minute just so for completeness? I want to make sure we got the.
I will play the whole thing.
Well, I want to make sure we play the whole thing.
Go right ahead.
Hold on. Can I get the site again, please?
Sure. It's page 90.
Thank you.
This was actually played during trial, so that was trial testimony at this point. Line 13 through 91, line 13.
through line 13.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
So there were cases where Milwaukee determined that a probe was defective, right?
Yes.
Okay. And how often did that happen?
Not very often.
Okay, can you quantify that a little better for me?
Not really. I mean,
1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000, what?
I'd say maybe 10 out of 100.
So 10 out of 100, you have a
And when I say that, I don't mean it's bad in a week. I'd say within the warranty period, 6 months.
Stop right there.
Okay.
Thanks, Shane. You read it now?
Yes,
You
sir.
heard it?
Yes, sir.
So, when Mr. Brown testified that 10% was being found to be defective probes within your warranty period, does that not warrant?
We didn't read that through to number 13. I thought we were gonna go through 13.
We can go through 13, it doesn't help your position, but go right ahead. Shane, please.
Okay. So 10% of the probes don't operate the way they're intended to, and you replace them. Is that correct?
It is, but keep in mind that some of these are also end-user error, where they're not maintaining the probe properly. They're not keeping it wet, they're not cleaning it properly, they may not have validation solution to validate the leaks properly, so some of it falls on them.
All right, you heard it now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, Mrs. Silvaggio, within 6 months, within your own warranty period, 10% of these probes being determined to be defective. Does that, in Hanna's, I don't know if it's a protocol or procedure, warrant testing or an investigation by Hanna?
If it were a correct number, it would certainly, we should make an investigation.
That's right. And we know now, today, that that has not been done by Hanna, correct?
If it were a correct 10%, but Mr. Jason Brown is not correct in that statement.
Okay. So you think he lied under oath?
He didn't lie.
He's
He's
just
just
wrong.
back from the hospital for 3 days. He was not asked to produce any statistical information, to look up any statistical information, to do any investigation onto the actual, and he was asked 3 or 4 times, to which he didn't respond. Then Mr. Kemp asked him again, suggested a number, and he agreed to it. So he was almost being bullied.
So Mr. Kemp was bullying him into lying.
He didn't lie.
He was bullying him to make mistakes.
I'm just saying, he did not do any research to come up with that number. It was a number he just took off the top of his head to answer the question.
Under oath. Do you think he takes the oath that lightly?
I
will try that question. That calls for
That's
speculation.
not nice. That's not nice.
So let me ask you this. Not only does this instruction manual not provide any information on oxidizing the probe, is it fair to say that there's no warnings in this instruction manual if you don't oxidize the probe? Would you like me to approach you and give it to you? Yeah, Your Honor? Yes, you.
I just want to double check.
Yes, sir.
This is one of the older revisions. And you're correct, sir.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Well,
Are there any warnings in the tip card of what can happen if you don't properly oxidize the probe?
An actual warning, if
Yes,
you
sir.
do not not sure if it's a warning per se, but it does say keep the electrode moist.
But it doesn't tell you the consequences of not doing that, correct?
Oh, it didn't say the consequences, no, sir.
Is it fair to say then, of all the materials that come along with this meter, comes in this box, to your knowledge, there's not a single warning telling you the consequences of not oxidizing the probe correctly? Is that what you're telling us, jury?
I don't think there's a need to put that information in there because we explained to them how to keep the probe correct, when to dispose of the probe. We said 10 to 12 months. We explained to them very clearly on keep it wet during non-use times, and we put big bold letters in red and underlined, this is for negative ORP conditioning.
Let me ask it one more time, because for some reason, I don't believe I got the answer to that question. Is it fair to say that there is not a single warning in the instruction manual, the tip card, or anywhere on that box telling you the consequences of not properly oxidizing the probe?
Okay, no, okay, consequences, no, sir.
No warnings, correct?
No consequence warning.
No warnings of consequence, correct?
No consequence statements, no, sir.
All right. So, you said a little while ago that you believe Milwaukee, after finally admitting that Hanna did not do any testing, you said Milwaukee did testing. Remember that?
I said that Mr. Brian Moore could have done the testing, yeah.
Could have done it.
Yeah. And
Okay, wait a second.
I-
Wait.
And I, myself, had checked some meters in the back.
Wait a second. Let's make sure we're on the same page. Did Brian Moore do testing or not?
To the best of my knowledge, he did, yes.
Did you do testing or not?
Yes,
And you did it on behalf of Milwaukee, correct?
yes.
All right. Let me have you take a look at your deposition, page 110, lines 18 through 24.
Page 110?
Yes, sir.
'18 through 24.
Yes, sir. And when you just lift your head up when you're done.
I said, okay.
Let me have you play that, Shane.
Did Milwaukee Instruments do any sort of investigation into why the MW500 was, according to these three customers, giving inconsistent readings when measuring negative ORP in Kangen wire?
I don't think there's a need to make a investigation. So
All right. Go to line 20 so we can finish this up on page 111.
Line 20.
Yes, sir. This is a continuation of that question. Shane, you have it teed up?
Yes, where would you like to stop?
Start at line 20 and stop at line 25.
Okay.
You read it?
Yes.
So that question was asked of you.
Okay, sir, you said that you didn't think an investigation was warranted. Do you know whether an investigation was done?
if it wasn't warranted, we wouldn't have performed it.
Thank you. So today we learned that you did a test, Mr. Moore did a test, but not on January 26th when you were under oath. You didn't mention those tests, did you?
Well, Mr. Moore did it when the tip card was originally created, and I didn't do it with regards to an investigation, as this question has been asked to me. Again, I go back to the concept, I had no need to do an investigation onto it as to the functionality of the meter in an overall performance. We weren't having significant failures. What we did do, and what I did do, sometimes before the inquiry, let me rephrase that, sometimes before the lawsuit, and certainly after the lawsuit, I've tested individual customers' meter, as I explained earlier. Took the meter, we bring it back, we put it into the simulator, as explained, check it to see it goes negative and positive on the meter. We can put an electrode onto it after that and then check it to see if at those points with the solution, did the reading correspond to the LCD readout. So that's the type of thing that I did do, perhaps on an individual meter, not on a group of meters, because there was no requirement for us to do. There's no investigation required. We didn't have that kind of failure.
Sir, when you were asked that very question regarding the investigation done by Milwaukee, you said it wasn't necessary and it wasn't performed, correct?
That's correct. In regards to this 3 items that Mr. Kemp asked me about. So he asked me about 3 inquiries. Did I do an investigation relative to those 3 inquiries? No, I didn't. Have I used the meter? After that, have I performed a test for other orders that the customer asked us to do? Yes, I have. It's normal transactional business. We do that.
Sitting here today, you have no recommendations on how this meter should be oxidized, do you?
I have no recommendation. You asked me that earlier, and I said 48 hours minimum in 2.5 vinegar, and to ensure that the electrode is always kept moist during non-use times.
You're not a chemist, are you?
I think you asked me that earlier.
All right, I want to make sure, because that question was asked of you in your deposition. Turn to page 112, lines 10 through 11, in terms of your specific recommendations.
10 through 11.
Yes, sir. When asked how long it would take to oxidize that probe, you said you didn't have any recommendations. That's correct?
I said I'm not a chemist. I don't have a specific recommendation on it.
That's right.
And I'm not a chemist.
And you don't have any recommendations until right now, right?
The recommendation is what the tip card explains in the instructions.
Okay. Are you familiar with the term selling points?
Well, I think many people are. Yes.
Okay. Do you know that Jason Brown testified in this court that he said things that were inconsistent because they were selling points? You familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
Are you familiar with Milwaukee actually using selling points to generate sales and profits?
I would think that all businesses use selling points, whether Amazon or General Motors or Toyota.
Even if it's untrue?
I would try to ensure that there's an ethical truth behind it.
There should be, right? Right?
That's natural, yes, sir.
Right. So if Mr. Jason Brown said to a potential client, I have tons of Kangen water customers that use this ore meter. And then during deposition, question on it, he says, well, I like to use the word tons. You know, that was a selling point to sell a product. Is that an appropriate way to conduct yourself as a business?
That's a superfluous statement.
Superfluous?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's something that people sometimes say when they're speaking in a capacity of, it's like when you go to a restaurant, right? You go to a restaurant and you're sitting at a table and there's 3, 4 people. Maybe 3 of them are women. One of them is a man. The waiter or waitress, they come up and they say, hey guys, are all of the women at that table guys?
That's what you call telling the truth? Or you're comparing that
I'm
situation
just-
to lying to get sales? Is that what you're telling me,
It's
Mr.
not
Curry?
lying. I wouldn't consider it lying. It's just a statement. It doesn't have a particular defined meaning. It's like, hey, guys, it's like tons. How many bricks are over there? A ton of bricks.
That's what you believe. All right, let me have you listen to Mr. Jason Brown trial testimony in this case before we leave for today. Can you tell me if you believe this is how a business should conduct itself? Shane, can you please put up page 101, lines 11, let's go line 9 through 103, line 16. Or line 20, actually. And we'll end with this question today, I believe.
Okay.
All right?
It does not say that.
But you knew
But one can assume that with Kangen Water, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, that is. Okay, 1877, real quick. Just have about 10 more of these. 1877. He says, quote, I need to read or from pH of drinking water and other beverages. And you say, quote, okay, I would recommend the MW101 for pH and the MW500 for port. Did I read that right?
Yes, sir.
So when someone's measuring ORP on drinking water, your recommendation is they use the MW500, right?
Yes.
Okay. 1878. Do you remember when I asked you if you had tons of Kangen water customers and you didn't really like the word tons? Remember that earlier in the deposition?
I do.
Okay, top of 1878. Quote, I have tons of Kangen water customers.
Again, selling point.
I'm just asking you what it says, okay?
Yep.
Quote, I have tons of Kangen water customers. The go-to ORP portable is the MW500, unquote.
That's right. That's what I said, and I did it as a selling point.
Okay, so you told a customer that you have tons of Kangen water customers, but you're telling me today that that's really not accurate.
A selling point statement.
Okay, well, there's 2,000 pounds in a ton, so how many Kangen
Again,
water
it was a
customers?
selling point statement. That's all I'm gonna say about it.
Okay. But the go-to ORP portable is the MW500 for Kangen water customers.
Selling point statement.
So that's not true? Here, let me try a different way.
It is a portable meter. That is a true statement.
Do you know
It's
one way?
also a selling point statement.
Okay. Okay, forgetting sales puffery here, do you know one way or the other whether the MW500 is a suitable meter to measure negative ORP for Kangen water customers?
Yes, it is.
Thanks, Shane. So, Mr. Silvaggio, do you endorse your number 2 guy at Milwaukee using selling points to mislead customers?
Mr. Parker, Mr. Brown is a salt-of-the-earth man,
I didn't ask that question, sir.
and he makes simple statements and simple analogies when selling. It's a It's a statement, it's not, he's not trying to lie directly. It's not his intent.
You know something, I have a follow-up to that, but we'll leave it to tomorrow. I think we'll end with your statement saying he's not trying to lie directly. And we'll pick it up tomorrow, Your Honor, if that's okay. It's fine.
All right.
4 minutes till.
And, ladies and gentlemen, before I read the admonishment, we do have an extra hour tomorrow morning because we want to move this case along. And I'm thinking 9:30.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, that's what I've been told.
You don't mind.